wanna start a family, anyone can join. I wanna start a family, anyone can join.
Hi everybody! Have you been noticing a lot of talk about climate change, but not sure how it affects you personally? Do you recycle and want to do more towards living sustainably, but you don't know what else you can do? Do you want to know what your local government and community are doing about climate change? Welcome to the Together as One podcast, where we will answer these questions and more. Be inspired. Take action. We are all in this together, and together as one, we can make a difference. In this first show, you will hear me interviewing people at Block Coffee in the West Side, people at Findlay Market to get an understanding of what our community thinks. I sit down and chat with Larry Falcon, the Director of the Office of Environment and Sustainability, and Ryan Mooney Bullock, the Director of Green Umbrella, to get an understanding of how climate change is affecting the Greater Cincinnati area. Make sure to come back and listen after the show for one small change that you can do. Enjoy the show. When you think of climate change, what comes to your mind?
The first thing that comes to my mind is Democrat or Republican, and how one side is 100% climate change and the other side says is a complete lie.
The first thing that comes to mind is melting icebergs. The second thing is I think of how when I was little, the winters were really cold. We had a lot of snow, a lot of ice. Now they're very mild. There's just not a lot of, we might have one or two ice storms or snowstorms, but we don't really have those now. They feel more like late fall, early spring. And then summers tend to be very, very hot. When I was younger, they were not as hot. So I feel like I'm 34. In 34 years, just the weather has just changed dramatically, in my opinion.
When I think of climate change, I think about worsening weather patterns, bad storms, floods, and just people losing places to live because of it.
Like habitats, animals losing their habitats.
When I think of climate change, I see the videos of the sad little thin polar bears in my mind flashing through, how they're hungry and how all their ice is melting because we suck as humans.
I think of weather being hotter. Just getting warmer and less cold.
Can't hardly tell what season it is. It is the 3rd of March and it's snowing. It's a little odd, ain't it?
Kind of doom and gloom. It seems like a pretty tragic thing that's going on under everybody's nose, and everybody's too busy to really seriously worry about it. I've seen graphs that, you hear people talk about this cyclical temperature change that's happened since, the beginning of time almost on this world. And when you look at the data from the ice and you see the spike that's just continuing to go almost straight up, you can see that it doesn't relate to any of the cyclical temperature changes over the, last 100 million years. So it's a little scary.
When you think of climate change, what do you think of?
I think of my kids and their future.
Well, when we hear about climate change in the national media, what we mostly hear about is coastal storms, sea level rise, extreme droughts, raging wildfires in California and other places. That mostly is not what climate change looks like in Cincinnati. In Cincinnati, we are seeing a pattern of intensifying rainstorms, getting more rain in a shorter period of time than we used to, and intensifying heat waves. And those are trends that we expect to continue and to intensify. And so when we talk about climate change in Cincinnati, we're talking primarily about intense rainstorms and about heat waves.
So climate change looks different everywhere you go. And in Cincinnati, we're really seeing extreme rain events as one of the major symptoms of climate change. And so we have had more 100-year storms in the last decade than we have had in many previous decades. So we're just getting more frequent large rain events, and those rain events are kind of getting more and more severe. And so we're seeing flooding. Cincinnati has a big issue with combined sewer overflows. So when there's too much stormwater falling on the ground, running off into our sewer systems, the sewer system can't handle all of that. And so not only are we getting flooding, but we're getting a lot of water pollution that's resulting from all this extra stormwater falling on our region.
I just need a break for a second. At the end of the podcast, I have a tip for you on how we can help with this issue.
We're also seeing more extreme heat events, which is especially problematic for folks who do not have air-conditioned homes or other cool places to go. If you get to be in air conditioning all day, it might not seem like a big deal to have 100+ temperatures for a week in a row. But when folks don't have someplace to get cool, it can actually be really deadly to have those extreme heat events.
Do you think that climate change is affecting Cincinnati?
I do, but I don't know if it's in a way that I could personally measure in my lifetime. I've only been alive 24 years. So there's nothing necessarily that I have noticed, but based on reports and history and things like that, I think it affects the world as a whole.
Do you think climate change is affecting this area?
Yes.
How do you see it affecting?
Well, the weather is pretty crazy. We are getting, the summers are a lot hotter. The winters are a lot more unpredictable. The river is flooding a lot more often. It's more difficult. We have a small garden plot from time to time, and it's getting more difficult to maintain that because of flooding and or drought. So it's getting tricky.
Do you think the city of Cincinnati or this area is affected by climate change?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
What do you see that it's being affected by?
Even though it still gets cold out, it just seems that, I don't know, like it's just different than it used to be. The bugs seem really bad. Mosquitoes are terrible right now, and I don't know, it's just not right. Something's off, and we're lucky we live on a hill, but there's been a lot of bad storms and floods around here in the last few years. So.
No, other than what I heard, they was talking about how the North Pole is melting and all that, and it shouldn't be, but it's melting. So it's gonna be there's a lot of water up there. That water got to go somewhere.
Do you think climate change is affecting the U.S.?
Yeah, I think so. Minimally. I don't think I see serious effects of it, but I do think it's probably affecting us.
I don't know of what proof. It's just, how can it not be? I feel like it's probably, if it's affecting somewhere in the world, it's got to be affecting everywhere. Not really something that I'm seeing, or I am, and I'm just kind of ignorant to it. Don't really know that that's what it is.
Do you think it's affecting Cincinnati?
Honestly, I'm not a resident of Cincinnati, so I don't really know. However, I could see the Ohio River rising and definitely affecting the banks of the Ohio River in Cincinnati.
Not in the direct way, but it's affecting the whole society. So I think there is a lot of denial to climate change. And I really appreciate the work that you are doing because it's going to probably make people think about it.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to say exactly if climate change is directly affecting me personally, but I think it is affecting the environment pretty much, big time. Maybe spring coming earlier, winters being less warm, less snow. Even though we had a really cold spell recently, but I think it's you have to look at the longer term and see the effects that it's causing.
I think we can see right now the effects of climate change. Last year we were on vacation in Glacier National Park, and the personnel over there told us about how the climate change is affecting several species. They are close to disappearing. The glaciers are melting, so we can see it in during vacations. So, I think it's accelerating. The evidence is pretty clear, so you have to go and look around what is going on. People right now, I think, is very focused in science, but the science that they want to listen, not the science that is right there. And I think some politicians want to change the view in science, but I think the science is pretty clear and seems like it's accelerating. So I'm 43 and I saw the difference in the climate. And if it's accelerating, that as the science suggests, I think it's going to affect our kids, our grandkids.
Change is inescapable. We are all erasable, but we're irreplaceable.
Everybody, here we are at City Hall, and I'm sitting here with Larry Falcon, and we're going to talk about climate change. He works for the city of Cincinnati, and he's going to tell you more about himself.
I'm the director of the city's Office of Environment and Sustainability. At OES, our mission is to lead Cincinnati city government and the broader community towards sustainability and the practice of good environmental stewardship. What that means is that we've led development and now lead implementation of the Green Cincinnati Plan, which is the city's roadmap to get to sustainability. And we also have a variety of other functions. We run the recycling program, we do in-house environmental consulting, help with redevelopment of contaminated properties, and some other roles. Well, really everybody is, but when we get these really intense rainstorms, the water comes down faster than our drainage systems were designed to accommodate. And so we get what we refer to as flash flooding in places that you wouldn't expect flooding. They're not alongside the river, they're not in traditional floodplains, but they're just places where water can't drain fast enough. And so within the last year, MSD has received claims from literally thousands of Cincinnati residents who've experienced flood damage in their homes, usually in their basements, because the water just came in too fast. And that is one of the big impacts of climate change in Cincinnati, is just this pattern of in our homes flooding in places where we haven't traditionally expected it. The other thing that we would look at is heat waves. And while most people consider heat waves to be uncomfortable or an inconvenience, we don't realize that among all the natural disasters, heat waves are by far the biggest killer.
Wait, let's listen to that again.
Heat waves are by far the biggest killer. Heat waves kill more Americans than hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, any of the natural disasters that you more often see on your news reports. And so recognizing that here in Cincinnati, lots of people live without air conditioning, lots of people have pre-existing medical conditions that make them more vulnerable to heat waves. Those two categories overlap. We have people with pre-existing medical conditions who live without air conditioning. And so that really is where the heat has its biggest impact on Cincinnati, is among those most vulnerable people. There are some other important topics, including some that will probably become important to us as we look further out into the future. We expect food supplies to become less assured and food prices to become more spiky as agricultural activities become more uncertain in output. We expect climate refugees, including people displaced from coastal areas of the United States, to be relocating internally within the United States, and how we deal with those influx of people who want to take advantage of Cincinnati's relatively secure position with regard to coastal storms, coastal flooding, wildfire kinds of threats. Those are things that will be issues for Cincinnati in the future.
Climate change is a phenomenon that we are observing, whereby carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, other greenhouse gases are basically creating a barrier that holds heat into close to the Earth's atmosphere. And so instead of this heat escaping back out into space, it's being trapped kind of closer to our planet, which is creating kind of unusual weather patterns. So we talk about global warming sometimes, and climate change doesn't necessarily mean that there is always a trend of warming, but it does mean that overall the temperature of the Earth's surface is increasing, especially the temperature of the Earth's oceans are increasing slowly over time, and that's creating all kinds of unpredictable weather events. So in some places you see a warming trend, in other places you see a cooling trend, and many places you see just erratic temperatures, so extremes on one end or another. So the main idea behind climate change is that humans are putting a lot of pollutants into the air, mostly as a result of burning fossil fuels, which have been trapped in the earth for a long time. We're kind of taking this resource and moving it from underground to up in the air, which is causing a number of unforeseen changes to our climate.
Water coming from the shore, wind is ripping rain away. We are only scraping by till there's only clear blue sky.
What do you think is the cause of climate change?
Pollution's definitely a part of it. I don't think that people really care about whether or not they impact the environment in a positive or negative manner. I just think they do whatever they want to do instead of being conscientious about what they're doing as humans onto the environment. You know, everybody can do their part a little bit. I think everybody should try to do their part.
I guess greenhouse gas. And, you know, it's possible that some of it is related to cyclical changes. And maybe it is completely driven by nature. But I find it very odd that people aren't willing to try to do anything to, like, make things better. You know, you'd think if the world's really going out of control, we would be doing everything we could to combat it, but we tend to be just using that as an excuse to do nothing.
What do you think is the cause of climate change?
Well, humans, carbon production, you know, fossil fuels. We're really shooting ourselves in the foot. It's almost too late. We really need to get our acts together. Together. That's the main word. Not just pointing fingers at people and saying you're crazy, you're stupid. I mean, the rest of the world knows what's going on. I mean, the politicians here in the U.S. are just trying to score points with their constituents, and they're ignorant to the fact of what's going on because I think of a lack of education. Just being taken advantage of. So, yeah, it's a shame. It's a real shame. But we gotta do what we can.
What do you think the city of Cincinnati should do, or do you know anything that the city is doing?
Some more, I mean, I think the change would happen faster. Well, I mean, if large corporations took it on and government at the highest level took it on, I think that we could make huge impacts. But if that's not going to happen, it almost has to happen from the bottom up. Just how everybody lives their day-to-day life and how they spend their money would have the biggest effect, I think.
Do you think the local government is doing anything about climate change?
Not that I know of directly. It's, you know, we're in a fairly conservative area, and it seems like that's one thing that they can use to just use as a political talking point instead of actually doing something about it.
I think that the city of Cincinnati can do a lot more with educating people, as well as trash pickup and things like that.
I like to think that everybody has a little bit of good in their heart, so I would like to think that Dayton is doing something about climate change. However, I don't know if they actually are.
I think there's a lot they could do. I'm actually a transplant from Lexington. I just moved here like 6 months ago. And one of the things I noticed is that Cincinnati is really dirty. there's a lot of trash on the side of the roads. And I know it's a bigger city versus Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky. You don't have maybe the manpower, but one of the things I've noticed, they could clean up the roadways and put the trash in the trash. They could, I think they've done a great job, and I know this was a huge controversy with the trolley system, but promoting using the trolley system versus driving your cars individually. I think there's a lot of different things they could do. Cleaning up the Ohio River, it's known to be a very dirty river. That river bleeds into other water systems. They could clean it and make it better. I think the easiest thing to do would be to have trash cleanup. Clean up some of the neighborhoods, promote better products. P&G is based here, and P&G could do a lot better in promoting more natural products. It's a great company. They do a lot for the city, but they could definitely promote those things.
I don't know, because I don't know what you can do about climate changing.
Educate, I guess, because I don't know what can be done. So I feel like if there was more education on it, then I would know. So same with everybody else. If people just knew maybe small steps that they could take. So I guess if the city kind of educated on just simple things that people can do that would impact our future.
Well, I think local governments also have a big role to play. I think, and actually, I think that's where most of the action is taking place, right? In local governments, city-wide, throughout the country, because federal government is not doing much at all. And so I think, in terms of recycling programs, making buildings more efficient or energy efficient,
green spaces,
trees, renewable, maybe transportation with renewable energy, education maybe through local radios or schools.
We need some education proposal to teach children to be conscious about climate change, because if parents don't believe it, at least somebody else with some kind of authority at school can point it out a different view, and they can just think about it. At home, somebody says something, and at school somebody is saying something completely different, and well, they can choose.
Together as one.
One of the keys to minimizing the impacts of climate change is to minimize our production of greenhouse gases. Making modifications to our lifestyle using energy that's generated from renewable sources, solar and wind, instead of from fossil sources like coal and natural gas. Driving a vehicle that is an electric vehicle, not a gasoline vehicle. There's a whole series of lifestyle changes. Modifying your diet to eat more plant-based foods are all ways that we can reduce our carbon emissions, which adds up with the millions of other people around the planet that are doing similar in order to reduce the impacts of climate change on all of us. The city of Cincinnati has a program called the Year of Living Sustainably, where we're coaching residents on how to make sustainable lifestyle changes. The Year of Living Sustainably is 12 one-month mini campaigns, each focused on a different topic. So there'll be an energy month, a transportation month, a food month, different topics that we'll address throughout the year. You can find us on the web by Googling Year of Living Sustainably Cincinnati and look at the lifestyle suggestions that are provided there.
Are you doing anything yourself about climate change?
We made serious renovations to our home. We sealed it up. We have way more insulation than we need. We have a small house. We don't have a large house. We have a very small carbon footprint. We had one car for a very long time, but we really only drive when we absolutely need to. We cut out a lot of the meat intake. We recycle everything we can. We have way more recycling than we do actual trash. I don't know, just a lot of stuff that you can do personally at home.
Well, in my house, we try to be greener. So we use a lot of natural organic products. We recycle, we compost. I try to teach my kids, like, we don't just waste things to waste. And just try to be good about that, you know, instead of driving a car that takes a lot of gas and a lot of energy, we try to be more sustainable. And some of those, like our behaviors and things like that. And we just try to make better choices.
Think personally to help with climate change?
We just try to be better consumers. We're not perfect, but you know, try to not use a straw even. I mean, I know it's all little tiny things, but I feel like everything's affected. So we just try our best. I try to refuse lots of bags, and I take the bus. I like walking, but I mean, I don't know if it's doing anything. So.
Are you doing anything personally yourself?
I definitely try to positively impact the environment. I try to watch my carbon footprint. I mean, obviously nobody's perfect, but I try to use the reusable bags at the grocery store. I try to use reusable things. I mean, I'm not doing great today. However, some days I try to do good. I try to use a reusable water bottle instead of like an actual bottle of water. So I try.
What do you do about climate change?
I recycle. I feel like that's the one. I always think, like, I don't know what I can do. What is one person going to do? But I do feel like recycling makes a big difference. And so I guess that's what I do.
Everything they can to stop everything from changing around us. Because sooner or later it's going to have a big effect on everybody.
We recycle. We can participate in different groups that are in the community, but I think the main thing is to talk with corporations, because if I throw away this cup, it's not going to change the temperature of the globe. But we need to work together to push big corporations that are doing a lot of harm. And also there is a huge difference between the first world and the third world. So, sorry, but I feel that the United States could put more effort in trying to help with this problem and not getting out of particular conventions globally. So I think as a society we should push to our governments and to try to do a better job.
And I think, like, I also agree, like, I think it's something that as an individual we probably have a responsibility to do something about, and sort of like a society. So for example, we pay for green energy, so from our bills it's from like renewable energy for electricity. So we try to do like that small thing. Of course we recycle, like Alejandro was saying, but of course I think responsibility wise, corporations have a big responsibility. So I think even if we did like at an individual level, everybody made an effort, I don't think that would be enough. Probably need governments to get involved, corporations, either voluntarily or involuntarily through government regulation to curb emissions, CO2 emissions, and otherwise it's I don't think it's going to be enough.
I think I've always kind of lived kind of low impact. But climate change has been something that, I mean, my mom was into ecology from way back, and like climate change has been something that's been on the radar like since the 70s. And so, basically I grew up in a household where we were already living, like trying to combat climate change like then. So I've just kind of continued that lifestyle.
For ordinary citizens in Cincinnati, there are two types of activities that are useful. One is basic self-help preparation for what we know is coming. So at your own home, you can look at the kinds of things that will help you be less impacted by severe rainstorms. Identify where the nearest storm drain is to your house and check and see whether it's clogged. If there's a bunch of debris clogging your storm drain, more likely that the water's going to back up where you are. Go down in your basement and look at how you have things stored. If things are up off the floor and in plastic containers as opposed to cardboard boxes, then you're more likely to get through basement flooding with less damage. Look at whether you have a backflow preventer on your sewer line. Look at whether you have a sump pump in your basement and whether it works. Look at whether your gutters are clean and have downspouts that lead the water away from your foundation. There's a whole series of things that one does to rainproof your house, and it's important to do those things. If you're in an area where you think flooding may be more severe, then you need to have more of an emergency plan. Where are you going to evacuate to? What are you going to take with you? What supplies do you need to have on hand before the emergency comes? One of the things that's difficult about intense rainstorms is that they tend to be very localized. It may hit very hard in one neighborhood and not hit the next neighborhood. And so it's very hard to know whether it's coming and where it's going to hit. So if you live in Florida and there's a hurricane warning, you know that everybody in your area is going to get the hurricane and everybody's preparing at the same time. But if you live in Cincinnati and there's a severe storm coming, you might not get a warning and you might not know it's going to be you, but being prepared when it comes will still be very important for how much disruption you suffer in your life and how much economic impact you suffer.
Green Umbrella is a regional sustainability alliance that brings together all the people who are working around sustainability issues in the Greater Cincinnati area and helps them form action teams. And we have 7 action teams that are focused on 7 different sustainability issue areas. And the idea is that kind of all the players working around that issue come together to collaborate, learn what each other are doing, and take on collective projects that help the region move further, faster with regards to accomplishing our sustainability goals. Yeah, so Green Umbrella does not have a specific climate change platform right now. A lot of the work of many of our teams is focused on solutions that also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So when we talk about the energy action team, they're working to increase the amount of renewable energy being used in the region and to decrease the consumption of energy in general. So both of those things are decreasing, coal burning electricity that is then creating greenhouse gases. Similarly, the transportation action team is trying to get people out of, single occupant vehicles, so shifting away from gas as a fuel, so towards electric vehicles, but also encouraging people to bike or take transit, which are much more efficient modes of transportation when it comes to greenhouse gases. We also have a green space action team, which is increasing the amount of protected green space in our region. And we know that forests are one of the major solutions to climate change. So trees suck up carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So they, by planting more trees, by helping forests mature and not be turned into paved or built environments, we can kind of start creating the solution to climate change by increasing green space. There's a number of other actions. So right now, Green Umbrella does not have like a climate task force. But we are about to go through a new goal-setting process for our action teams and a kind of strategic visioning process for the organization. And so we're interested to see, as we start engaging the community around, what they see Green Umbrella's role over the next 10 or 20 years, we're curious to see if that emerges as a really critical force that Cincinnati residents are interested in pursuing.
So if I wanted to learn more, what would be the best way for me to find out what a Green Umbrella does and how I can get involved?
Yeah, so Green Umbrella has a website. It's www.greenumbrella.org. We also are very active on Facebook and share a lot of news about what's going on regionally as well as nationally in terms of environmental issues. You can, of course, find us on Twitter and Instagram and all those other places as well. But we encourage people to come to an action team meeting. So our action teams meet monthly and they're open. We'd love to have you get involved with a team that matches your interests.
And then are you guys working with other organizations?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about Green Umbrella is we're what's called a collective impact organization. So we are a really small staff, and our role is really to increase collaboration across the region around sustainability. So we have over 300 member organizations that are really the driving force of what we do. So when we talk about our action teams, there's folks from government agencies, from other nonprofits, from businesses who are all coming together. We're facilitating those groups, but they are really the ones who are doing the work to make big changes in our region. So Green Umbrella, at the end of 2018, launched the Cincinnati 2030 District, which we see as one big piece of decreasing greenhouse gases in our region. And so the 2030 District takes the central business district of downtown Cincinnati and is recruiting members who are ready to take on some bold sustainability goals. And those members are building owners or facility managers, anybody who has control over the utility bills, basically, of a building. And we're asking them to commit to reducing their energy consumption and the amount of energy coming from fossil fuels, to reduce the emissions related to transportation of their employees. So, if people are commuting to work, how can we increase the ride sharing, transit use, biking to work by those employees? We're looking at decreasing water consumption, which also has greenhouse gas implications because a lot of energy is used to heat and move water around our city to clean it. And also, we're going to be creating a health metric. So what does it look like to try to improve the health of the building, whether the building's environment, but also the occupants of those buildings. So the goal is to have a 50% reduction in those things by 2030, hence the name 2030. And when you look at kind of the energy consumption of a city, about 40% of it is typically in that central business district. So if we can cut the greenhouse gas emissions coming from the central business district, that has a huge impact on what our region is kind of contributing to climate change. So we see that as one really proactive solution, and we're excited to be recruiting many more businesses and other property owners downtown to help us get there. So we have 18 members already with 23 buildings included, and we have a director on board, and we're really going to be launching kind of the recruitment phase of that in the next couple months.
We were right and we were wrong. We're alive but not for long. I wanna start a family together as one.
How do you feel about climate change?
I feel pretty indifferent to it, honestly, mostly because it doesn't affect me personally, and I don't see it in like a large scale.
My family we're not super passionate about it, but we definitely believe in it, and I think there needs to be more awareness of it. I think that our president is an idiot, and that he's not an idiot, he's just ignorant. And I think he's stubborn and he doesn't want to acknowledge it. And I think that other companies that do believe in it should support it, and they should speak out and kind of minister to households about it.
Sucks. Thinking about my kids' futures, it's kind of like scary in a way. Just knowing that animals that I know of are things that they're gonna just know that once existed. Simple thing. Maybe they may not really, a polar bear to them might be something that doesn't even exist anymore, and that's just crazy to me.
It's probably the issue that is gonna determine the future of humanity as we know it, because I think one of the difficulties of climate change is the effects are slow in a human lifetime, but they're going to be profound eventually. They're going to be really, really strong. Like we're talking about sea level rise, We're talking about millions of people around the world being displaced because of flooding, and agricultural, landscapes changing, habitats changing. I mean, we're talking about a global change in so many things, and so I think that's one of the challenges of climate change. It doesn't affect us right now strongly in a way that I think it forces people actually to change, but we'll have to deal with it. And the problem is, if we don't deal with it like sooner, climate change is going to deal with us in a way, whether we like it or not. And so the sooner we're prepared for it, I think the less painful it's going to be.
I want to start a family, anyone can join. I want to start a family, anyone can join.
Change is inescapable. We are all erasable, but we're irreplaceable.
Together as one.
Water coming from the shore, wind is ripping rain away. We are only scraping by till there's only clear blue sky. We were right and we were wrong. We're alive but not for long.
I want to start a family, together as one.